be my kind of indulgence. He would travel from city to city on a private jet. He'd stay in the presidential suite of the finest hotels, where the rooms have their own pools. He'd have an 18-ounce fillet steak for dinner, cooked rare, complemented by 3 bottles of wine. Then he'd sample the whiskey, sleep it off, and start each morning with a long massage. So we've got Peter Woods with a speech entitled Bill, Bill and Bill. Peter Woods.
Mr. President, Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and future Toastmasters. Tonight, my objective is to inspire my audience. What an insanely daunting task that is. However, if you were here for my icebreaker, one of you on your evaluation slip said that I inspired you. So, Mr. President, my badge is a year late. I'm not out now. I'll let it slide. But when we look at the CC journey, it has flown for me. I've done it in a year, and I've had 3 other people racing with me. To name them, Martin, Karen, and William, all coming along at the same pace. We've had a really good time. What I'd say to anyone who's just joined Toastmasters or is a new member is that take every opportunity, as Mr. President said, but when the competitions come around, that's a different level of speech. And I proudly won 2 of the 3 club competitions. Next year I will be the undisputed club champion. But moving on, Bill, Bill, and Bill. Toastmasters, these are 3 men that impress me now. They inspire everyone. They are Bill Clinton, Bill Joy, and Bill Gates. So I'm going to take them each one at a time. I went to Yale, but I did not inhale. Working his way up, he made many, many scholarships, and this is how he managed never to do military service. It was in Yale Law School that he met Hillary, and they had their child, Chelsea. In 1978, he got elected to governor of Arkansas, only to be voted out in 1980, but back in 1982. 10 years later, he's now the 42nd president of the United States, the leader of the free world. He is assuming office on January 20th, 1993. The groundbreaking stuff he did. He was the first person to appoint an openly gay cabinet member. He changed the rules on clearance so as LGBT workers could serve at a higher level throughout when clearance was granted. Economically, he turned every deficit into a surplus. This was kind of stuff that was unbelievable. However, most important to all of us here at Toastmasters as Irish people, in 1995 he was in Northern Ireland and he stood up and said that the terrorists are yesterday's men. And he stood by that and followed through further in the Good Friday Agreement when he rang every leader and said, guys, you need to work this out. This is really important for the future of Ireland, and we have an important relationship with the US. And I think Bill really cared for this country and did some great work there. In 2001, he finished 2 terms, and as I said, he was the only Democratic president to serve 2 terms without military service since FDR. So it was a massive, massive achievement. He was succeeded by George W. Bush, and in my own opinion, he is Hillary's greatest asset and greatest liability for her 2016 campaign. Moving on, Bill Joy. Now, Toastmasters, I'm willing to bet, can I get a show of hands? Does anybody know who Bill Joy actually is right now? Martin, I was expecting your hand to go up. Well, I'm not surprised. However, another show of hands, has anybody accessed the internet in this room? Pretty sure thought so. It is Bill Joy that wrote the networking protocols that allow that access to it. You may have heard TCP/IP, and Martin, stop laughing. He wrote those protocols. It is him that allows us to access the internet. I'll be the first to admit somebody else would have done it, but he's the one who did. In addition, he is one of the founders of Sun Microsystems. Again, this is a technical company you mightn't be overly familiar with, but Sun Microsystems have the navigation systems in 90% of the world's commercial airlines. That will tell you how robust their software is, and nicely complimenting George's speech without even realizing it when I was preparing this. This man is one of the greatest computer programmers in history and will be revered as such. In 1999, he was taken into the National Academy of Engineers, and in 2011, the Computer History Museum. But there's one more Bill. This man is my personal hero. William H. Gates III. We all love Microsoft, whether we admit it or not. He was born in 1955, and he grew up in Northwest, and he went to Harvard. Many people say he's a dropout. Technically, he's not. He went on sabbatical after year 2, he just never returned. I'm sure Harvard would be delighted to have him back. It was at this point his mother arranged for a meeting with IBM, and when he went to IBM, he had nothing. He didn't have anything, but he knew his stuff at the same time. So he is associated with what is said to be one of the greatest business blunders in history. A guy had written DOS, and he said to him, I'll give you $50,000 for your company, or 50,000 shares in my company. And your man took the money and run. In hindsight, yeah, it's a sore one, but maybe it wasn't the worst decision at the time. This started Microsoft, and it built up and up. In 1985, Windows came along, and well, the rest is history. We're on Windows 8, and it's still a very dominant force. The reason it was such a success was because Bill was a ruthless leader. He had a clear vision. He gained a position of #1 everywhere he could, and then defended it vigorously and made people depend on Microsoft. But that's not all that he is. In 1994, he married Melinda. He had 3 kids. Those kids will never have to work in their life, but they will only see a very small fraction of his money. Most of that money is going into the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, as is Warren Buffett doing the same thing. What I love most about Bill Gates is that when he met Zuckerberg recently, he said to him, well done, you've made your money, now it's time to give back. And I think that's a really good message that he's sending out to the wealthy elite, that he's there. Well, all that to me is inspiring Toastmasters. It's also daunting because you look at it and you go, these men have changed the world on a global scale. And that's not an exaggeration. And you kind of look at it and step back and think, could I really do that? And the quick answer is no. For 2 reasons. First and foremost, those guys have done those things. And in the case of the presidency, you have to be a president. But we're all at a point in our lives where we've moved on, and we've got our own lives. But those men were flawed too, just like us. Bill Clinton famously did not have sexual relations with a woman. Bill Joy, similar to Luke, is a neo-Luddite. He is. He thinks the robots are going to take over the world. And Bill Gates was an absolute bastard to work for in the early days of Microsoft. And that's an understatement. You had to bring your sleeping bag to work, and you worked about 18 hours a day. That's how tough he was. So that's a bit distant for all of us and how to inspire us. So I thought, how do you look at inspiration on a local scale? I thought first of my job. And one thing I do is I go into small businesses and I talk to business owners and convince them they need mats, cleaning products, whatever. But what's really impressive when you meet these people is that you've got someone who's pouring their heart and soul into a business, working anything from 50, 60 hours a week, because the chances are they're their one-man band, they've got to do all their accounts and stuff while the shop is closed or whatever. They're employing a few people. Then when they go home, they're still a husband or wife, or the mother or father when they get home in the evening, and it doesn't stop. That's really impressive, and that's inspiring, and we should always recognize that. Taking it a step to the club, all of us should be proud of ourselves for being here. Well, there's one member who I'm going to name and shame, whose unyielding commitment and determination to make this club better and welcoming members. Colin, it's you. Thank you very much. And arguably insomniac emails that you get at 3:54 on Christmas Eve morning. To me, that's just so impressive, and I think it's part of the huge success of this club, and it encourages all of us to be better Toastmasters. But then lastly, Toastmasters, there's 2 people in this world that should encourage you, and you should see and inspire yourselves each and every day. And when you get home tonight, just look at your partner and talk to them, because the 2 most inspiring people in your lives should always be you and them. And if you think about it for a few minutes, you'll see that that's probably true. And if it's not, you should maybe look at why it isn't. Simply being your house, your home, your car, your relationships, your kids, your family, your jobs. You two are working together, supporting each other, literally in every way. And you're making your own lives possible, and you're constantly giving to that other person. And that enriches your lives, and that is the most important thing. So while I've talked about the success of 3 amazing leaders, let me leave you with a piece of advice from Albert Einstein. And he just said this very simple quote, and I think it's what I want to leave you with. Strive not to be a success,